I'm not climbing up that summit block.
Come on.
I'll help you get up there, but I'm going up. No, dude.
At least.
Yeah, well, I'll look at it, but you should have brought support. It starts out as a perfectly reasonable, easy enough hike. Okay, so maybe the hike to Pinnacle Saddle is better described as a moderate hike, but it's only a little over a mile long, but it does gain 1,100 feet over that mile, so yeah, it's steep, but I'd still call it moderate. Yes, indeed, this is exactly what one would expect of any reasonable national park experience, a wide, well-maintained trail with some mildly challenging rocky sections on it. There was certainly nothing foreboding about this, and I had no reason to suspect what lay ahead of me. The views from the trail were just a preview, by the way. If you were thinking of just hiking to the saddle, stop thinking about it and just do it, because it's totally 1,000% worth it. Okay, the trail is non-trivial, as I kind of suggested. I would definitely not attempt this unless you're in reasonable shape, but still, I'm telling you, the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze on this one. The trail is well maintained and it's well designed too. I like how the drama builds as the trail approaches the saddle. Like, it's one of those trails where you just know it's building to something good, and in this case, it absolutely delivers. And the payoff is this perfectly framed view of Mount Rainier where you can pose to show your friends how adventurous and amazing your life is. This is also a great spot to turn around if you have good judgment. I don't have good judgment. And my objective today, or so I thought, was to get to the summit of Pinnacle Peak. You see, I don't really have a lot of rock climbing experience. The last time I went rock climbing was 30 years ago with my Boy Scout troop, so I don't really remember a whole lot about it. Full disclosure, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in some other videos, I am not a mountaineer. I am a skier, and I am a mountain biker, and I am a hiker. I only climb mountains if there is a skiing or biking payoff. Except that I've gotten into summits on the air, this ham radio-based obsession where we carry our radios to the top of mountains and earn points for making contacts from the summits of said mountains. Therefore, I have another incentive to drag me to the top of mountains. Anyhow, I won't insult real rock climbers watching this channel by detailing our route, but suffice it to say that there is a pretty apparent boot path to the approach. Not having any experience with the rating system, I had something completely different in mind when I heard Class 4 Scramble, because I focused on the word scramble. I did bring my bike helmet, and that's what my GoPro is strapped to, because I was warned about that by the experienced rock climber I was attempting to climb this with. I wasn't entirely aware of how experienced Brian was, though, because that's not usually the way someone introduces themselves, right? Nobody is like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm an experienced rock climber. I've qualified on 513.5 pitches, blah, blah, blah. No, because that would just sound arrogant. Nobody would do that. That's just the kind of thing you find out about somebody after you've followed them way further up a pitch than you should have followed them, and now realize you're well outside of your comfort zone. I learned a lot about classifications, route finding, rock quality, 3 points of contact, and my personal limits on this excursion. I was starting to suspect trouble when I saw Brian pointing toward the summit block and scoping out a route, and I was thinking, oh, so the route's like, it's behind the block or something, right? I'm thinking like it goes around that or something. It's not. It certainly isn't just up that thing in front of me, right? It's not. It is definitely just, nope, it's that wall is the route. I'd have felt a lot more comfortable on this pitch if I was on skis, honestly, but climbing up on all this loose rock and depending on shoe rubber instead of metal edges and snow, and I'm just making excuses at this point. I'm not a rock climber at all. Somehow the amount of Adderall and caffeine I had in my system was not adding to my confidence. Brian was guiding me up this thing, and if I hadn't been with him, I would have turned around a lot sooner. This is also where I learned what Elvis leg is. It's when you're getting nervous about falling to your death on the side of a mountain, and your leg starts shaking uncontrollably every time you're on the ball of your foot. I've experienced that before, but only from being really tired, not from abject terror. Anyhow, within about 100 feet of the summit, I hit my limit and I couldn't climb any farther. The last time that happened to me was walking across the top of the White River Glacier on Mount Hood without crampons and only one ice axe between two people. So I stayed behind with our gear and let Brian climb ahead and finish the summit without me. It's not the heights that scare me. I can sit on a ski lift and stare down at the ground all day long without an issue. It's the exposure I don't like. I hate it when my footholds are this consequential. It's the same reason I hate taking huge gap jumps on the mountain bike. I don't have enough confidence in the consistency of my execution to feel comfortable doing things like this. I want a bigger safety margin. Anyhow, in case you were wondering, this pitch that I'm sitting on in this video, this is a class 4 scramble. Like, legit rock climbers don't think of this as like an ascent that requires support. Well, I do. I was terrified, maybe even a little traumatized. And I still needed to get down. After getting back down to a safe zone, I should have taken a right and walked back to the car, but I'm not smart enough to do that. We thought instead that it would be a great idea to see if we could make it over to Unicorn Peak and back before sunset. So we set off along this section of the Tatoosh Range, once again following a boot path that leads to more scrambling. Rock climber scrambling. So, class 4 scrambling. Something regular people would call climbing because you have to use your hands. So much scrambling. More scrambling than I knew what to do with. And of course we didn't make it to Unicorn Peak. Like, there was no way that was going to happen. A 2-mile scramble is not remotely comparable to a 2-mile hike. And I knew better going into this, but I did it anyway. I've done a lot of bushwhacking, so I have no excuse for having expected a user-generated, unmaintained trail to be anything other than this. Brian was able to notch off a couple summits, though. He's applying to be a Mazama or something, but what I learned from this is something that I kind of already knew, which is that I'm not a mountaineer. I'm 43 years old, I've lived in the Pacific Northwest my whole life, and I've not climbed Mount Hood yet. If I was a real mountaineer, I definitely would have already notched that off by now. I only do technical climbing if I've somehow lost control of my life. I'm glad I brought a decent pair of work gloves with me. I'll try to remember to always do that in the future from now on. They helped. I make these videos in part to help you kind of plan your own adventures in the Pacific Northwest, so I hope this gives you an idea of what to expect from this area. As I've recently been made aware that the Tatoosh Traverse, which is like going the whole length of this Tatoosh range, is kind of a big deal among certain outdoorsy communities. So in case you're likely to get too ambitious for your own good, here's your warning. This won't be a problem for real climbers, by the way. Please know that I don't think of myself as a competent rock climber. So keep that in mind. I'm very much regular people here when we talk about rock climbing. I am going to revisit this as soon as it gets a decent amount of snow on it, because I've got a hunch. Okay, I've got intelligence too. People have told me. This area has some amazing skiing in it, and I strongly suspect that the approach to Unicorn Peak is much easier with snow on it. It's on my winter list. Unicorn for sure. I really want to get Unicorn this year. So I hope you're subscribed and you've clicked that little bell icon so you'll get a notification about it. That'll probably happen sometime around March or April. I'd like to take this moment to thank all my Patreon supporters, especially my Lomi Goodness level sponsor, Charles Kim. I'd also like to thank my Hero Dirt level sponsors, earning their special mention at the end of this video: Bryce Ulrich, Devin Young, and Edward Lanton. Many folks have signed up to support this channel since I started my Patreon page, and I really am truly grateful for all your support. If you'd like to add your name to this list, click on the link in the description to navigate to patreon.com and sign up today. Now get out there and go climb mountains within your comfort zone.